Thank you for joining me on El Shaddai. This is the most compound name of God that I have unpacked. I found myself digging in. It probably took 3 or 4 days to unpack what I have discovered, and I'm sure there's so much more to really dive in with. But I wanted to just start with sharing a little bit about what I am getting about El Shaddai, our God who is almighty. I don't think the word almighty can even help us comprehend all the components of how God shows up as El Shaddai. When we read the different passages of where it talks about the Almighty, we see that there's the covenant with Abraham, and God calls himself El Shaddai. He's a covenant keeping God. And so for me, when I pray to El Shaddai, I'm appealing to that attribute, that character of God, that he is a covenant keeping God. So then we unpack Numbers 24:4. There were so many little pieces that I was pulling out. I noticed that Balaam, he turned his face toward the wilderness. The wilderness to me typically represents drawing close to God, desiring to be in an intimate relationship with him. So here Balaam turns toward the wilderness. He turns toward God, and the Spirit of God comes upon him. And then he begins to talk about the Almighty God and how the Almighty God blesses his people but destroys his enemies. And so when we call upon El Shaddai, we're also calling on and appealing to the character of the God who blesses us, but also goes after our enemies. That's that destroy or deal with violently, I believe. It's how God deals with our enemies. And then I just noticed that he pointed out about the bright and morning star. Jesus is the bright and morning star according to Revelations 22:16, which I like to find other scriptures that back up what I'm pulling out. Ezekiel 10:5, there was a lot to unpack, and I encourage you to go back and unpack different things that pull out to you. But as we're focusing on El Shaddai, it is in reference to when he speaks. So we're referencing his voice, the almighty voice. And I went to the idea of if I heard the voice of God like audibly, there would probably be a trembling of standing in awe, not a trembling of fear, like I'm afraid of the Lord, but that holy fear of standing in awe and reverence to him. So as I begin to unpack how Jesus manifested the name of God, or the name of El Shaddai for us, we see 1 John 3:8, he dealt violently with the devil. He came to destroy the works of the devil. Colossians 2:15, having disarmed the powers and authority, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross. Hebrews 8:6, now, however, Jesus has received a more excellent ministry, just as the covenant he mediates is better and founded on his promises. So there's that covenant that Jesus took, right? That also shows up as El Shaddai for us. And then the voice, I found Revelations 1:5, and I saw the glory of God of Israel coming from the east, and his voice was like the roar of many waters, and the earth shone like the glory. The other passage that we looked at was talking about his voice being like the sound of many like wings, right? So there's just this, I guess, boldness. I don't know how else it would sound to hear a whole bunch of wings going. But the roar of water I have heard, like if you stand under a waterfall, and it's just, actually there's a peace that comes from hearing, but also there's an awe, right? The last thing I wanted to share with you is while I was unpacking and studying El Shaddai, I listened to this message from Todd. I'm not sure what his last name is, but it was amazing that he connected the breast, because as we unpacked Shaddai, right? Shad, breast. He said the breast is connected to the heart. And Jesus came to show us the heart of the Father. And in his opinion, El Shaddai is also related to the heart of the Father and how the heart of the Father wants to show up for us. And that took me to remembering when I was a mom and I would hear my kids, you know, that newborn baby cry, and you would instantly want to come and meet their need. And a lot of times that involved nursing, or if you didn't nurse, there was the bottle. But there was nourishment that was coming and supplying, and a lot of times it was more than enough, right? So even with a bottle, there's always more than enough. Like usually the kid falls asleep before it even finishes the bottle, because there's that comfort that comes, that peace that comes from being nourished, fed, that it's enough. So I encourage you to continue to look for ways that El Shaddai shows up in your life as the covenant keeper, as the Almighty God, as the nourisher, that he brings enough supply for you, more than enough. And just enjoy connecting with who El Shaddai is and how he wants to meet your needs. I'll see you on the next Name of God.